Can anyone hear me? Am I on?
I can hear you. I'm just trying to work out who's with us. I've got Mayor Paula.
Thanks, everyone. I can't see anyone or anything at the moment. Ah, there you go. Thank you. Drink, Angela. Looks like a cocktail.
Oh, no, it's just, I don't like the taste of plain water, so I put electrolytes in all the time.
Love water. It's funny, is people hate it. I love water.
Yeah. I have to be really thirsty before I'll just drink plain water.
I thought it was just me who couldn't see or hear anything, but no. We're getting there. Kia ora, Norm. Kei te pehe koe.
Kei te noho haumaru au.
Oh.
You know what that means?
You're staying well.
Safe, haumaru, yeah.
Home.
Haumaru is safe, yeah.
I was close. Haumaru.
Yeah, haumaru, yeah.
Haumaru.
Yeah. So the key is kia noho haumaru ki tō kāinga, stay safe at your home. That's the cat's call. Yeah.
Oh, pai. Haumaru, that's my new word of the day. Kupu mo te rā.
Kupu hau mo te rā, new word of the day.
Kupu hau mo te rā.
Hau meaning new, kupu word, new word, o te rā of the day. Yep. There you go, Angela. You got a new kupu Māori too.
Oh, do you know what, Norm? I had all of the keti, is it? From Scotty Morrison, all 4 boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was 2/3 of the way through the first, and I can't find them anywhere.
Oh, no.
They're so good.
Oh, no, but I've got the workbooks are way better.
I'm on to this one now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I can't find them. I had a big spring
Have you all
clean-up
just
a few months
reconnected?
ago.
Sorry, I've just been knocked off. I've come back. Just a minute. I'll just do my video. I can see Angela.
That's all you need. That's all you need, Martin.
Yes, I do. But unfortunately, there can't be you can't. The standing orders don't specify you with the quorum. 5 or Councillor O'Leary.
Button. There's when you look at participants up on the left-hand side of the screen, it says active speaker or all participants. You can go to gallery view.
Yeah, no, I've got that. It's just I was disconnected. But Councillor Mcpherson's here. And Councillor Norm is here. I'm just here. Carmen, if you could just go off mute and just confirm our quorum, please.
I can confirm we do have quorum, Martin.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Okay, in which case, sorry, I'd accidentally turned off my own internet connection here, but that's another story. But anyway, welcome. We now declare open the Environment Committee. And I will now first of all go to our run sheet. Can I fit? And I note the full apologies from Councillor Bunting and Naidu Rolf, who are members of the committee. Are there any other apologies from members of the committee in terms of our quorum? If there are none, I will move that they be sustained. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour will say aye. Those to the contrary say no. That is carried. Can we now move to the confirmation of the agenda? I will move confirmation of the agenda. Seconded Councillor Thompson. If there's no debate, all those in favour, those to the contrary, that is carried. Declarations of interest, if there are any. No declarations of interest. I now go to the public forum. I noticed Joe Wrigley from GoEco provided a written submission to our climate change action plan. Carmen, did she want to present to that, or is it just a written submission? A very good written submission, I have to say, and I thank her for that.
It
Carmen?
is just the written submission. She is not presenting today.
Okay, I will just move that the written submission from GoEco be received. Seconded, Councillor Thompson. Those in favour, that is carried. And I obviously would pass on to GoEco our thanks for what I think is a very comprehensive response and very constructive, obviously. Right, we now go to the confirmation of the minutes of the open committee minutes, 1st of June, and that is on page 6 on diligent. Are there any matters? I will, Councillor Thompson, did you want to move that they be a true and correct record?
Yes.
As
yeah,
you were the chair of that meeting, obviously, and
yeah.
It would be good if possibly Councillor Mcpherson, who was present as a member at that meeting, if you would be so inclined to second that the minutes are true and correct record, Councillor Mcpherson.
Yes, but it was so long ago, I can't remember whether they are.
Well, I'm sure I will trust your memory. All right, I will put that the minutes are true and correct record. All those in favour, those to the contrary, that is carried. We now move on to item 6, the chair's report from myself and Councillor Sarah. Obviously, we're going to be dealing with significant aspects of that report in terms of item 8 and item 9. Is there any discussion or debate? I have nothing to add to that except to emphasise the need for ongoing resilience. Right, I move that report. Sorry, Councillor Mcpherson.
Yeah, just a question to you, and an excellent report. I'm wondering whether you had help with it, but
it was very much a joint report to which I'm very grateful for an excellent deputy chair.
Yeah, far be it from me to question your environmental credentials, Mr. Chair, but seriously, I did have a question, and maybe it's a discussion point. We're talking about the more resilient and city and sustainable city and so forth in the end, towards the end there. And I'm thinking of a point that I heard Councillor Sarah make this morning about how we're part of a region with regional climate change issues and needing emission targets regionally. And given that we're such geographically small part of the region, I'm just want to flag that I think any targets that we set for Hamilton City or issues that we have to be looked at in context with region-wide, obviously nationwide and internationally and so forth. But you know, we're a pimple on Waikato's backside, really, in terms of the size. So some of the emission targets and some of the solutions won't necessarily be all that relevant if we're just looking at Hamilton City.
Councillor Mcpherson, are you? I think you're making obviously an excellent point, and there is a clear intention to work closely with regional council, which Deputy Chair may want to update us on. But in my view, very relevant point. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I just on Dave's question, I thought it was, or almost question, I thought it was actually quite a good point where would it be worthwhile not wanting to add a hope of work, so but in the next GM's report to actually have a bit of a summary of particularly what's happening at regional council level in this regard and the regional land transport plans, we can get a little bit of a bigger picture of where we're sitting in terms of the region and those broader goals or targets.
That would certainly help me in getting the context in my head.
Happy to include that in the next report.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'm going to actually add that because I think you raised, Councillor Mcpherson, a very key point. So I'm going to add that the Environment Committee receives the report and notes a further report from the GM with regard to our cooperation and work with the Waikato Regional Council.
Can I add something, please?
Yeah, sure. So, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chair. In respect to that, I think we should also acknowledge working with the University of Waikato and the Crown Research Institutes such as NIWA, who play a pivotal role in the science underpinning this. And I would like to acknowledge, see if we could reach out to them to help them get them to help support our process. They have huge resources. Māngai Norm would have worked with many of them too, with some of the iwi perspectives as well, and the consult. So I do think we need to broaden out rather than taking on board Dave's point. We need to have a broad approach to this because we can't achieve unless we work alongside the best science and the other agencies as well. So if we're reaching out into the region, I think we would need to use the Crown Research Institutes and the university as well.
Māngai Norm.
Yep, tēnā tātou. The same conversations happening in the Waikato wellbeing space as well. The same conversations happening with the iwi. So climate affects all of us. It's how we interconnect with each other to provide the overall solution. So I'd like to put it within the partnership matrix with Regional Council, NIWAs and the CRIs, also iwi, and also some relevancy around the Waikato wellbeing movement, because there is a group of leaders doing things within the climate action plan for Waikato. So knitting everything together would be a good report back to us, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, can I suggest possibly that the Environment Committee receives a report, note that the GM will report further on close working relationships with the Regional Council, University, NIWA, and Māori. It said, is it all right? I mean, we'll just so obviously that's a note for us for future, and I think that it should be all noted. Is that okay? Silence, I think, means assent. I think
it's certainly okay from my perspective if you're asking me. But.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, look. Okay, we've dealt with the questions. If there's any further, is there any further
Dave
debate?
Just noted he ducked out because his grandson broke his finger. So.
Oh dear. Okay.
I presume we still have quorum though. 1, 2, 3.
Who broke their finger?
His grandson.
Ouch.
And I'm just confirming that we do still have quorum at this stage.
How much are we? How close are we to the quorum?
If we do lose another member, then we do lose quorum.
Oh, in which case, okay. In which case, the chair will strategically identify appropriate coffee breaks. Okay, right.
Perfect.
Okay. Look, I'll move that with those additions that the Environment Committee receives the report and noting the work with our key partners. I move that, seconded by Deputy Chair Sarah. All those in favour?
Oh, a debate, really?
Oh, debate. Sorry. Okay. Debate.
Very.
Councillor Thompson, then Mayor Southgate. She's still got a hand.
Oh no, I was no.
Okay, Councillor Thompson. Right.
Only very briefly. I guess wanted to emphasise that the latest reports that came from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change essentially paint a pretty bad picture and call for, I think, more urgency than what we are currently giving to climate change as a council. So I think it really is time for us to kind of take a broader view of what we're doing and look at where we can push harder and act with more urgency. And that debate can come today when we're looking at our climate action plan and also with our strategy. But it's certainly the window is closing now. We have, I think it's estimated in the next 10 years, the way that we're going globally, we'll use up our entire carbon budget completely. So, if we're not making changes in these next few years, then we really are putting ourselves on a really bad path. So urgency is really called for.
I have Councillor Mcpherson's hand up. I'm not sure he's with us on the audio.
I am with you, Martin, but the host, which is either you or Carmen, has stopped my video. I can't do anything about that.
It's Carmen. I'll blame Carmen. You wouldn't trust me to be the host, obviously, Councillor Mcpherson, would you?
I think you're an excellent technician. You're acting worship or something, but no, look, seriously, sorry, my little problem with my grandson. He's off to hospital now with a very badly broken finger by the look of it. But just going on to Sarah's point about the urgency shown in the recent report, last week's report, I think it was. I just like to say that in all of the areas of council's work, I would like to see reference to, firstly, the climate change report and the issues raised, and secondly, when we have them, to our targets, because I'm mindful of the debate and discussion we had only in Tuesday this week, was it, in the community committee or finance committee, sorry, about whether we should have 611 car parks in a new Rotortuna Village shopping centre. There was no reference in the staff report to environmental issues. There was a very small reference by a couple of speakers. And it just seems to me that context in our discussions on from the car lobby on council and from other people in the community, we need to be making sure that these sort of issues are raised. I would like to see in each staff report to do with transport and buildings and probably just about every area of council that we're actually addressing that issue rather than just leaving it to this committee or to some national policy statements. This is a good committee to have that sort of discussion, but it has to be all of council, and I really don't think it is all of council when I hear that the City Council's planning guidance unit is demanding masses of car parks in a shopping centre. I'm saying that is out of kilter with what we're facing. That is not responding to climate change issues or crisis. And it's not just a matter of waiting for the district plan. We could be waiting for 3 years there. Let's get ahead of the game instead of tagging along behind, kicking and screaming, which honestly is what's happening at the moment within our council and probably within the community. Thank you.
Is there any further contributions? I'm looking for any further hands up that you can see, Carmen.
No, there's nothing at this stage.
Thank you, and I'm sure that our GM Sean has noted that for further discussion with the SLT and the incoming Chief Executive, particularly in terms of how staff reports are formatted, obviously, across all committees. That's certainly noted. Right, I will move that the Environment Committee receives the report and also notes the further work with our other key partners. That has been seconded by the Deputy Chair, Councillor Thompson. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Those to the contrary will say no. That is carried unanimously. Is that correct, Carmen? Right, thank you. Right, we now move on to the item 7, the open air burning bylaw deliberations report on page 12 of Diligent. And that is Sandra Murray with us, the author?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, yes, you are. Of course you are. I didn't look at the end of the table there as I do at council. Anyway, look, seriously, Sandra, we're in your hands if you'd like to present this report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, councillors. I will take it that the report has read. Does anyone have any questions?
Question from Councillor Mcpherson.
Sandra, I sort of understand the principles we're talking about here and the need for air quality to be improved. I'm just wondering, it's always been in the back of my mind about this particular issue, whether there is an environmental benefit still in, for instance, burning wood as opposed to maybe burning coal, compared with generation of electricity by diesel and coal, and even by hydro perhaps, but certainly diesel and coal, which where I noticed that the Huntly Power Station has been started up again in the last couple of days. So I'm sort of thinking, we're stopping people, or we're starting to work on the stopping of people burning with fireplaces. Has the other side of the ledger in this particular area been measured at all?
I'm not sure I quite understand your question there. This is only relating to open air burning, not to people burning things inside for heating, for example, or cooking. So we're only talking about the likes of barbecues, hangi, a brazier on the back porch.
Fair comeback in that sense. I'm just thinking of the next step, because there are some councils, Timaru is one that I've noticed, that have completely banned it, and that's been the next step from this step. I guess I'm sort of flagging an issue, a potential looming issue.
The waste management and minimisation bylaw bans the burning of any rubbish, for example. So that is already covered. And there's sort of not much else in outdoor burning other than perhaps leaves, which would come under this. So there's not much else to ban. I mean, you might be going a little far to ban people having barbecues and braziers outside. That might be considered an undue infringement on people's rights and freedoms. So you'd have to sort of look into that a little more deeply.
The regional council raised this in respect, I think, of Tokoroa, and I know it's been raised in Christchurch. I'm not sure what the current law there is. The next step of banning fireplaces in new homes and that. So, look, I don't want to go into it any further here. I'm just wondering.
This issue today does not include fireplaces.
I heard you say that. Yep.
Yep.
But I know that in many places that's been the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm flagging it. Thanks.
Is there any further questions? Right, we now move. I will move that the Environment Committee receives the support and recommends that the Council revokes the open air burning bylaw 2015. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor O'Leary. Thank you. Right, we move to debate. Is there any debate? I can't see anyone raising their hands. Okay, if there's no debate, I will put the recommendation as a motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Right, we now move to item 8, the 2021-22 Climate Change Action Plan, authored by Charlotte Kapner and, of course, Sean. Charlotte, we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair Martin. So just to introduce the report, this is our second Climate Change Action Plan. In September last year, the 2020-2021 was approved, and over that year, we implemented many of the actions in the plan. In June this year, you received the annual report, which outlined what we've done in line with that action plan. And this one that we've got in front of us today, 2021-2022, and outlines the actions that have been included into the long-term plan that we'll be putting in place this year. It also includes key things around our climate change strategy work and the work that we're doing to embed climate change considerations across council. So that's really around the climate change and environment policy that we're putting in place, and also building it into the business case project planning, and council reports. A new section around climate change and what that means across the different reports that you'll be receiving the different committees. So that's just a quick introduction, and now we'll take some questions.
Right, questions to the report.
Is that, does that include the attachment, Martin? The action plan, is that we're talking about that as well?
Yes, that includes obviously the plus the attachment, obviously. Yeah,
Thank you.
Your Worship, do first question from you, and then I'll have Councillor Mcpherson. Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Leary. Yep, fine.
Thank you. A couple of questions. It's great work. It's well on the right track. It's got a good framework. Just got a couple of questions. I'm interested in how we harness easy, quick gains as well, especially when they're achievable. And I was wanting to know if we could strengthen the timeline goals around fleet vehicles. I think there's a real opportunity here to, we've been talking about it for the last year and a half, I have to say, about moving some of our fleet, not necessarily the working vehicles, the utes and tractors and things, but I'm talking about the corporate type of vehicles. It's a bit light on that. I would like to see us have a target to move our corporate fleet to a portion of shared vehicles, MEVO or Loop as it used to be. And I would like to see us transition into the EV space, good enough for Jaguar to go fully EV by 2025. Then I think we should be following suit and be clearer about the action. I think we've got still, last time I asked Richard, and I may not be up to date, there were 2 electric bikes available for staff to use during the day, only 2, which seems very light. And we've got a very low number of EVs, and I know they're expensive at the front end, but so I'd like to see that. I'd like to see an electric charger for staff vehicles and councillor vehicles. I'd like to understand how we can do with fleet. Where would that be incorporated, please? And then one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Charlotte.
So at the moment, there is action in there around hybrid vehicles for the corporate fleet. The other piece of work that I understand that the facilities are undertaking at the moment is looking at a meeting with MEVO. So we haven't got all of the detail in here, but there is a lot of work underway. So I think we just need to make sure that we're putting together the right plan and reporting that back through the quarterly reporting as well. There's also, as Evelisa has jumped on, the workplace travel planning work that she can also.
So supplementary to that, if I may, then, is where would I expect to see the targets? If you don't set a target, you don't. I think it's really good the work's happening, but I'd like to see where the target of moving from where we are to something else is. That before I go on to my next question.
Through the climate change strategy, that's where we're intending on setting the broader climate change targets. So that's one area we can look at setting a target for that as well.
So you're saying there'll be a specific target to move to shared vehicles, to move to some kind of EVs or hybrids, increase our cycles, etc. That will be set there, and I'll see it. I'll see the target.
So in terms of, so I can jump
here
through the chair, if I may. So with the bicycles, the Infrastructure Operations Committee approved 2 mobility providers through our permits, which is Lime and Neuron. As part of that agreement, they are to provide 50 e-bikes into the public. So for us to decide whether HCC purchases e-bikes or utilises a public fleet that's available out there that has the safety ratings already included. So that is being considered. With MEVO, that's also being considered in terms of replacing our fleet with a car share, working alongside other organisations close to us as well to determine whether we can share our fleet. And we hope to have an action plan in place for that by the end of this year. So I'm working with the team in facilities to look at the fleet replacement. But that also includes purchasing of hybrids. Pretty hot demand for them at the moment with the new government subsidy. So there's a few delays in purchasing, but we're looking at how we can look at low emission fleet vehicles to replace the fleet that has elected members have been asking for a long time. So that's
right. I know I did introduce Richard, to the Chief Executive of MEVO and that cross-organisational car share thing. But I'm just wondering where it goes, that we don't lose sight of it. It's really excellent that there's actions happening behind the scenes, but where's it in the strategy? So I can come back to you in 6 months and say, well, you were going to have a complete strategy by this date. Can I please see it? It's just losing, because, you know, no disrespect. It's just been a little bit lumpy getting to this point. It's a really good point to get to.
So where do we find it? How do we monitor it? Evelisa?
Yeah.
So that's something that I can work with Charlotte to actually have that clear in terms of the targets and that time frame as to whether that how that sits within the climate action plan reporting that has been presented as an improvement for next time. So I can work with Charlotte on that. Okay,
Carmen, and if that can be a minute note as well for our reference, that would be helpful. Any further questions, Your Worship?
Yes, just two more. One is about waste. We've done a great job. Your team's been fantastic around the waste. We're leading the way. So well done to through Angela's committee and through your staff. I'm interested in the what's next. You're not going to be surprised by the question. So there are some waste streams that we know we've been talking about in the round for some time, and I want targets set on those. So, for example, where's the next stream of waste that we might tackle? Is it construction waste, which is a large proportion of the volume? And we're at, what was it, 51% of people are using the food waste recycling at the moment.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether we can adopt a target to stretch that to, I don't know, 60 within 2 years and then 70, so that we can, because imagine what we can do with a greater target. So the waste, where do I see the movement on the next waste stream? Construction waste, also still interested in tyres. And the other thing is, as I said, with the other target.
So the waste minimisation plan has the 33 actions that are associated with that, and a report comes through to the Environment Committee on progress towards those. The construction waste stream is the next one that we've started on, and workshops have been held in the industry as to start progressing that. In terms of the specifics on the targets, that's something I'll work with Charlotte and the waste team also to understand what that looks like and how we present that through this committee to show our progression towards achieving those targets for both waste diversion from landfill and also diversion of that construction waste away from landfill and to reuse.
So is it fair to say there's some more work to be done to create some seamless reporting between IO and environment, so we know where in one place we can see what's happening in the trends in the climate space? Or am I wrong there?
Yeah, I think when we get to the forward work program report, it sets out that sort of exact conversation around what goes to infrastructure operations and what goes to Environment Committee. And so that waste minimisation, management minimisation plan, the monitoring of that comes to the Environment Committee. So that's due to come to the Environment Committee in February next year. So that plan is monitored by this committee. So this committee has visibility of that, and the actions that Evelisa is talking about get reported through to here as well. So I think
I just want to know where the targets sit more, Sean. I agree that this is a cross portfolio, and I know that Angela and Sarah will work, and Martin will work that out anyway. But just where I see visibility of the target we're aiming at. The outcome is that you're saying that sits in the waste, but it doesn't sit in this climate.
So the climate strategy will have the higher level sort of goals and targets, and then as we drop down into some of they will that will align with the transport strategy and the waste strategy, etc., where you get some of the more specific targets around, say, number of EVs or some of the specifics around construction waste, etc. Those are embedded in those sort of more functional transport waste strategies, etc. The climate strategy is where you will get the sort of a slightly higher level view of.
Yeah, I suppose I struggle with that high level versus detail. I just need to understand that a bit better. Just my final question, for example, this one is directly for environment. I don't think it has any infrastructure ops view, but for example, the 2% to 10% shift, which we've all bought into philosophically and in principle. Where do we set the targets for that so that we can, because I'd like to think that before the next 10-year plan, we'd made some progress into, even if we were just a 3%. And then when do we want to get to 5%? When do we want to get to 10%? How long are we going to, because that's what's going to inform our next LTP decision, isn't it, Sean? If we're putting enough resource, not enough resource, we're not implementing, whatever, we need to know that.
Yes, and those targets are part of the nature and the city strategy, and so that is also overseen by this committee, and that's due to be, the monitoring of that is due to be reported back at the November committee meeting for the Environment Committee.
Thanks. So do you think then there could be some stronger cross-referencing to the subsidiary plans, so that if you're trying to measure or account for something to the public, or to use it to inform future spend, that you know exactly where you're going to find it? Because
yeah, I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, I'm just struggling. Can you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yep. So
thank you, Sean. Thanks.
Can I slip through you, Chair? Can I just make one sort of final comment on that?
Absolutely.
It's just so the climate action plan that's presented in this this report, this agenda, is looking forward for the next 12 months in terms of the actions that we're planning to do, and this is what is budgeted for in the LTP. At the next every quarter of the Environment Committee, we will produce a monitoring report, which actually reports on the things that have happened, that Council has done in the last quarter. And that's where we'll reference the things that we have done from a biodiversity point of view, from a transport point of view, from a waste point of view. And so we're capturing all that in one place on a quarterly basis, reported through to this committee through the Climate Action Plan monitoring report. And I think that's probably the best vehicle to pick up all those points that you've raised.
Yeah, so just asking for clarity on that.
Right, thank you. Right, we now move to Councillor Mcpherson.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Look, start by saying I 150% agree with the Mayor on the point she's been raising, particularly in relation to transport and how we can better monitor this. And I'll come to the 50% in a second, but I did want to just start by complaining about the executive summary, which I've done in this committee before and in other committees. It's not an executive summary at all. No one reading that would have a clue what was actually in the report that was being theoretically summarised. So that's something that I've drawn to SLT's attention in the past, has been agreed. Clearly in this report it hasn't changed. That's okay. I can go and actually read the main report, which is fine, but not the idea of an executive summary is it's supposed to headline what's in the actual report that's being summarised, and that isn't. So that's a process point, Mr. Chair, and I'd ask you as chair of this committee maybe to keep a close eye on that in future, please.
Oh, that's a broader across the whole organisation.
Yes.
I appreciate it's an organisational issue, and I appreciate that. Happy to talk with our team on that one. Thank you. Carry on. Next question.
The questions relate to. I'm looking at. Sorry, I've just blown up the page 30. The sort of infographic on page 30, I think you call them, with the blue lines and the green line and orange blocks and that. And I'm looking to the on the far right. It's underneath the blue and green actions. It says these actions will get us to 50% reduction target emissions. I'm wondering about if staff can tell me the justification for buying 6 hybrid vehicles, well, how that's actually going to, a continuation of that program would get us there, or how many tens of thousands of hybrid vehicles we'd need to do to actually play our part in that.
Sean, did you want to pick that up?
Look, it's a bit of a rhetorical question.
No. But I think the issue you're raising is what are our corporate targets. Have I got that right, Councillor Mcpherson?
Yeah, but Paula has just raised a lot of
Yeah.
that, and I, as I said, totally support her. But I actually think it's worse than that. I think our plan and our actions are both deficient, and I'm wondering. I mean, for instance, even the monitoring, when it says 6 hybrid vehicles, out of how many? Have we bought this year? And when we talk about the upfront cost, which Paula just had asked a question on, are we not doing whole of life cost benefit analyses? I've seen whole of life benefit analyses that show even a Tesla is cheaper after 5 or 6 years than a internal combustion engine car of the type we buy, small SUV.
So I'm not sure where. Yeah,
I'm wondering, where the work is.
Yeah,
And this
I'll
is
direct
not
that.
showing me that.
I want to direct that question to the GM if I can, or Charlotte. Do you want to answer that?
So I think there's 2 parts to it, and Emily might be able to jump in because she's been doing the work around all the corporate work, corporate vehicles. I think just from this graphic, it's important to note that this is just for our corporate emissions. So we're just talking about a 50% reduction in our corporate emissions, and the actions that we've mapped out and modeled, the reductions that are in this diagram, it will get us to the 50% reduction target that we've set. So I understand it's a broader issue around the ambition around the action in the plan as a whole, but for this one specifically, these actions would take us to achieve the 50% reduction target. I think looking at that target and resetting it through the strategy is where we need to then move to. That's the one that we've got approved at the moment, and that's where we're funded to get to that reduction.
Okay, Charlotte, just talking about hybrid vehicles, that seems to imply to me that a hybrid vehicle versus an equivalent sized ICE vehicle would there'd be 50% less carbon emissions, but that's not what the case is at the moment.
No, I think that's maybe just a confusion there. So what we're saying is overall, all the actions that we're proposing to take around our corporate emissions will achieve a 50% reduction target by 2030. Not that each action in itself would see a 50% reduction.
So what are the huge ones that will offset the very small improvements you'd get out of, for instance, the hybrid cars?
The actions around the wastewater treatment plant, some of the shifts around the grid, the energy efficiency and around the LED street lighting has had a good impact as well, and will continue to as an ongoing one. But yeah, it's the shifts around natural gas also. So the boiler changes with the low carbon heating sources will also see a bigger impact. So there are a couple of projects in there, especially the wastewater treatment plant, where we'll see a bigger impact.
But natural gas is under question at the moment. We know that. Whether it'll even continue to be available going into the future.
Yes, exactly. And that's part of obviously the consideration around moving away from natural gas. Is not just a environment consideration, it's obviously, a viability issue as well.
So what have we done in terms of renewable energy for council buildings, solar, wind, for instance?
Emily, do you want to mention anything on that one?
Emily?
Hi, Councillor Dave. Yes, we have been looking at it. There is especially with the libraries, we believe that will actually have an impact if we were to put in some sort of solar or wind generation on our library buildings. We've also looked at the Zoo Waiwhakariki as well, but I think at that time when we pulled up the idea, the design was pretty much already complete. So yes, we are looking at it where we can. It is new technology, even though it's been around for a while. It is actually still new for corporate buildings, so it is a work in progress.
There's been Wise Building was a pretty sustainable building built about 15 years ago in Hamilton East from memory, maybe even longer. So when you say it's new, the technology is improving, but it's been here since 1990s.
And it's just
Well Networks has ran a program for a while supporting that, putting it in a school, for instance.
There's smaller wins that we're also making, Councillor Dave, like just putting insulation into some of our buildings is making a huge improvement just on our energy bills just by putting in insulation, and that's obviously very, very old technology. But so yeah, there is lots of work happening in this space.
And this is either to you or to Charlotte, I guess. In Hamilton, I think is it 60-something% of emissions are related to transport. That's not necessarily Hamilton City, I understand, but in terms of us providing leadership and playing our part, we don't have much in the transport area. Buying 6 hybrid vehicles, to be honest, makes me laugh. So what else are we doing? Where's the council transport plan that, for instance, encourages staff to use public transport or walking and cycling? What's happening with that?
So I can go through the chair. So the travel plan is being developed by our council staff, which is doing exactly that, providing opportunities and choices for staff to choose different options on staff travel to, from and for work. So that is underway, and we'll see something in October for that. Elected members is also planned to have a briefing on that to provide input in terms of your feedback and guidance as to how we could lead that as a council. So that is in progress and underway. And we're working alongside Regional Council and the District Health Board as well.
Wouldn't that have been good to have a section on that in the report? Maybe it is there, but I'd skip
yes, it
through
is.
Okay, I couldn't see it in the...
There's an update blurb in the transport section of the climate action report. Okay,
sorry. The work with car share, 3.5 years ago, council expressed an interest, and the CEO talked about the fact that we would be getting into a program of, basically the question was how much of the car share could we buy, what proportion of our fleet transport could divert to that, and when could we do it? And that hasn't happened yet.
The same, that work is underway, and so we're looking at trying to transition all of council's fleet that we can into a car share opportunity. So that work is currently underway, and I'm working with Louise from Facilities on that, and we're also looking at how we can transfer some of our tool of trade vehicles like our lawnmowers, our truck fleet into electric operated fleet, or do we actually have to have trucks that are diesel powered, and can we utilise other alternatives for those purposes as well? So that piece of work is currently underway as well.
Okay. When you say currently underway, it's sort of a little bit underwhelming, Eva-Lisa, in the sense that it's been underway for 3 years or more.
So can I offer that through the Chair of Infrastructure Operations, she's asked me to provide an innovation report and an update on those types of options, particularly under the MOU that Council has signed for our car share. So that report is coming through to Council for infrastructure operations prior to Christmas.
Prior to Christmas, okay, that's good. The issue for EV has often been range anxiety. Our council area geographically is so small that could hardly be an issue for anything, but you've identified supply, or Charlotte has as one issue. You have, sorry, immediate or short-term supply issues. What other issues are there that are stopping us?
Through the chair, can I answer this one? We have approximately 60 passenger vehicles, all that could be transferred into a hybrid or electric vehicles. Hybrid has the benefit though of not requiring charging stations, whereas electric we need to provide charging stations. So these vehicles are located throughout the organisation. There's, say for instance, there's one over at the Holman stand, there's a couple at Duke Street. There's a dozen in the underground car park. There's right to the pool vehicles. There's a number everywhere. So what we're looking at now is working out where we can electrify, and the cost of charging is coming down every day, which is great. So it will be a point in time where we can actually start installing electric chargers. The way we're doing it now is that there's going to be no combustion engine passenger vehicles purchased through our renewals program. They're all going to be either hybrid or electric. The interesting thing, though, is a nice Suzuki Swift combustion vehicle has the same emissions as a RAV4 hybrid. So in some situations, we may still be purchasing those smaller combustion engines where their environmental impact is very, very low.
Well, how about a Toyota Aqua, which is the same size as a Suzuki Swift and has got a much bigger range and is hybrid?
Sure. So yeah,
I mean, it's Emily. It's not just surely it's not just, to put it as a question, not just about the issue of the emissions. It's also about the leadership in the community.
Absolutely. So we also don't want to be seen at, we need to balance that leadership with ensuring that we have vehicles that are fit for purpose. We've all made comment about previously about the utes and the Ford Rangers utes, whether or not we should be driving around those. If we then move to a Telstar, are we actually providing the right message to our community as well? So we need to make sure the vehicles that we purchase are the right ones.
Why aren't we doing that with the diesel utes then? Because I mean, I see staff go out in those diesel utes, and the boot bit is locked, never gets opened, never gets touched. They don't need them.
Yes, so I've done a review of all the utes in the municipal building and determined which ones we actually still need to be utes. And I think it's about 96% of them don't actually need to be utes. And we are working through the replacement of those over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. So what we're doing is, say for instance, parks and open spaces have some utes at Duke Street. They need to be replaced. So instead of buying a new ute, we're actually repurposing a newer ute from the municipal building, moving that out there, replacing the municipal building ute with a passenger vehicle. So it does take time, but we are swapping out our utes now.
And probably the other question, the point I raised before, do we do an all of life assessment of costs and emissions and so forth when we're doing a case for these purchases?
Absolutely. There's actually this really neat website that both central government pulls together, and Downer actually use it as well for their life cycle analysis. And we use that same information to determine what is the best vehicle to purchase when we're doing our purchasing requirements.
Do I take it in terms of the monitoring of that, that would come back through Angela's Infrastructure Operations Committee, you believe? Is that the correct? I'm just trying to think, the specific aspects of fleet life and renewal. Presumably that would come back through Angela's committee. Is that right?
That's something that I just need to check through the terms of references and make sure that comes back to an appropriate committee. Sure,
because obviously what Councillor Mcpherson is highlighting is the need to be across that and the bigger questions that he's raised. Is there any further questions, Councillor Mcpherson?
Only I'm not sure whether it was Emily or Charlotte mentioned, or Evelisa, the work with the regional council and DHB. I'm interested in the DHB one because we have huge numbers of staff and family and whānau driving there in cars. There's a fairly good bus system, which they're working on improving, linking to the hospital, Waikato Hospital, and there's a massive car parking and congestion issue at times around there. So I'm quite interested to know more about what we're doing with the DHB, which may not necessarily be right now in a verbal answer, but how can we get a bit more of a sense on what they're doing?
Yes, absolutely. We're organising a briefing for our elected members by the DHB on the travel plan work that's been completed. So we're looking at in the September-October period for that to come back to our elected members through an appropriate drop-in session workshop.
It's almost
So
like you and I set up that question, Eva-Lisa.
Thank you very much for that.
And
Made me look
certainly
good.
Councillor Angela will be, and you obviously respect you both across that. Right, thank you. I now have Councillor O'Leary to be followed by Deputy Chair Thompson and then Mangai Norm. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chair. Look, just a couple of concerns. You're asking us to endorse or approve the plan today. I just found it a little bit difficult to find the list of actions in the plan.
Charlotte?
Thank you, Councillor Angela. So in the plan, last time we included a list of actions in the plan that we then sort of went through and reported. This year, the timing of many of the actions that we were looking at haven't been approved by other committees yet. So for example, some of the transport work is yet to go through and get final tick off from the Infrastructure Ops Committee. So what we've tried to do is find that balance between, we've got the broader programs of work that will be happening for the year, and then through the annual report, the quarterly reporting we'll do, so in November, we'll outline all the sort of different actions that have been taken to meet those areas, because the level of detail just wasn't there to be able to sort of break down all the different actions.
Okay, so, but under the terms of reference for this committee, it's this committee's job to develop policy when it comes to climate change and in the environment, to approve strategies and plans, etc., and to recommend to the other standing committees. So I think if you're telling me that we haven't got an easy to digest one-page list of tangible actions because of all the other committees, I mean, that's going to slow things down, and I don't support that thinking. I think it's yes. Hi, Sean. I think it is this committee's role and responsibility to set direction. Is it not?
Sure.
Yep. Absolutely, and I think that's so setting the direction, and that is through the work program we're describing, through the policy, through the strategy. That is absolutely that direction, and that once that strategy and policy are approved, that will provide much greater direction to the decisions that get made at the infrastructure operations and other committees, for example, on transport and water, etc. At the moment, those strategies aren't complete. So that high-level direction that's coming from the Environment Committee isn't embedded in kind of any of those formal documents yet. So what this plan is, it's a report on all of the things that Council is doing, is planning to do, is budgeted to do, and the kind of the main sort of source of this is what's been approved through the long-term plan. So this isn't a directive plan telling the other committees what they need to do. It's actually a common place where all of the things that are happening through all of those other committees that have an impact on climate, we're collecting those together to be able to report on them holistically, so that we've got a single view of what is happening across Council in respect of climate change and the environment, but also to enable us to communicate that to the community as well. So it's not a directive plan as such.
Can we pull out, because you have to read the entire plan, and that's fine to paint a picture, but there should be a one-pager that lists the, for us to be able to manage and monitor and report back in a year's time, I guess, on these actions. Can we include that, say at the back or the front or wherever, the actual list? And second to that, this is the second, and I appreciate we don't actually have a strategy yet. We've done things a bit like a lot of things at the moment because everything's happening at once. We've done things, and this came out of what was it, last term when we declared that the climate change was an issue, wasn't it? Then we developed an action plan in absence of a strategy that would sit on the top. So I guess can we do a one-pager of the tangible things so that we can monitor them in 12 months' time? And second thing, where is that from the last 12 months? Because this is the second plan. So where is the data and the reporting and the monitoring of the initial 12 months?
So the action plan for the last annual action plan, we reported on that to this committee last committee meeting, which was a review of what had been done, monitoring of last year's action plan. So that was at last committee meeting. So that's the second question. And then the first question around, can we have a one-pager which kind of lists basically like a spreadsheet, is what you're kind of talking about, just a list of the actions that kind of summary. That's what you're looking for, isn't it, Councillor?
Yeah, because otherwise you have to go through each page and read it all and figure out what, it's not really clear how we've done in the past with things like this, actually what the action is. But just going back, Sean, to your first answer to my question about it was reported at the last committee. I know it was reported at the last committee, but why aren't we tracking it through each consecutive plan? Or is that what I think, was it Emily or Charlotte said we would do in a strategy? I'm just trying to connect things so that we don't lose, the things that we're achieving just because we've developed a new plan.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. These plans have a 12-month time frame, and so the last plan has finished, and so we reported on the finish of that last time around. So this is now the new plan which we're presenting.
But we achieved some things at the last plan.
Correct.
And now we've kind of lost oversight of that. Globally.
We might want to frame that either as part of the recommendation, actually, as part of the motion. It wouldn't be in a strategy. Yeah. There certainly should be some noting. Okay.
And I think just last, I think again to my point, and maybe I'll leave it for debate, but Emily, you said, and answered us a couple of questions I believe Councillor Mcpherson asked around, look, there are a lot of small wins that we're doing, and you gave some examples, or you gave an example of something, and I think that's my point. We're not capturing the good stuff that you're doing. I can't remember what the thing was, but yeah, there's just no clear lines of that, of us being able to govern and monitor, and that.
Yeah,
that
so
sense?
I think I understand the point. I think it's a good point that so the Environment Committee meets quarterly, and 3 out of those 4 quarters we report on or the monitoring of the plan. This particular meeting, we're presenting the new plan, but I think what you're highlighting is that we're missing the opportunity to. There's a whole quarter gone without actually reporting on the things that have happened in the last 3 months. So I think we need to make sure that when we are presenting any new plan, we're also not losing sight of monitoring the activity that has actually happened in the last quarter.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, we might work on some work around the motion that we'll put. Any further questions, Councillor Leary? Thank you for. No, we now go to Deputy Chair Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. And just following on from that discussion, we're just working on a motion. It's a bit hard not being in the same room, but which tries to capture what you're saying, Angela, in terms of having a bit of a summary. Because I'm also keen to have a clear list, and Auckland Council in one of their previous action plans actually had a clear list of key actions with timeframes and measurable targets, and then had a little traffic light beside each one, so you could see how it was progressing and if you were green or orange in progress or red, things were off track. So something like that would be really useful, but I would be keen to see it publicly available as part of the whole plan rather than just something for us to reference. In terms of, I've got a few questions, maybe firstly to Sean and Eva and Lisa, the discussion around the fleet. If we were to ask for you to come back to us with, say, some options for targets for having the corporate fleet, the passenger fleet, fully electrified, would that come back to the infrastructure committee because that's getting into that detail there, or would it come back to the environment committee?
Sean, in terms of the terms of reference, that's something that I just need to look at as to what the report would be asking for, because there's the specific terms of reference for them both, but I'll have Sean guide as to whether this one's an appropriate committee for that one.
Yeah, I think it's part of that, the conversation we had a workshop on a little while ago, and so the matters relating to transport go to the Infrastructure Operations Committee. So that would be a matter for the Infrastructure Operations Committee to consider.
So, because I'm just wondering, maybe we could say that we approve this report today subject to this summary sheet that we've talked about, and then subject to staff coming back to the Infrastructure Operations Committee with more detail on, with some options for targets for electrifying the council fleet. Because if we could understand what it's going to take to get us, say, by the end of 2022 or 2023 to have a fully electric or fully zero emission passenger fleet, then that's, I think, the kind of concrete, clear target people are looking for. Because the graph in here, it just has a little squiggly line and it's not really clear when these things will happen by, and it's such a good, well, that way we could communicate clearly to the public as well. So would that work?
Yes, I think that could work.
Okay. Sean, are you able to help with drafting, adding that to our increasingly longer motion?
Can I ask through the chair, is it a motion, or is that a staff action, or is that a continual update of the action plan? I'm unsure how fixed the action plan is to continue reporting, or whether there are opportunities to add a section in there in terms of further improvements that have been made.
Can I? Do you want me to? Can I answer that question? Yeah. So I think in terms of the action plan itself, I think adding an extra page or an addendum or whatever it is, summary of, is easy enough to do and add to that, and then we can. That is holistic across all of the climate actions that would come back to this committee, specifically around fleet or transport matters. If you want to kind of dig into what the options are around fleet or those things. In terms of the operational consideration and decisions, they would go to the Infrastructure Operations Committee.
Angela, would you feel comfortable with something coming to infrastructure to kind of say, here's what it would entail to get us to fully electric by then or then?
Yeah, Eva Lisa's nodding. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that sounds sensible.
Okay. Paula, does that kind of address...
Sorry, my video on. Yes, I think it's about simplifying the cross-reporting. I think, as Sean, we were saying before, when you reacted to what I had to say, I'm looking for a one-page, one-place glance monitoring report. And obviously there's going to be cross portfolios, but there's no reason why those can't still be translated across the portfolios. I wouldn't have thought that would be too difficult, would it, Angela, to pick up what you're doing with your committee and report it through the same framework? I think we can do that, so I'd be happy with that.
Cool. My next question also was just from the previous conversation, the mention of on-site energy generation, and we know there are changes in the market which are going to potentially make it more economic to be doing some of this. Where would that sit, and is that something in terms of the role of the Environment Committee in looking at that?
So in terms of the on-site energy, again, it's just understanding the differences between whether the on-site energy and which facilities they are at, because each facility fits under a committee. But I think that there are guidance from the Environment Committee and your environmental principles and the climate action strategy and the work that Charlotte's doing to guide us in terms of what we have in place, particularly also in our management policies. There is work being done in the energy management space in terms of solar arrays on facilities, utilising hydro, particularly at the treatment plant to generate energy, just understanding what those options are in our facilities that are owned by council, so that too can be brought back through the appropriate reporting mechanisms in terms of this committee or the alternative community or infrastructure operations committees.
Charlotte, what are your thoughts around that? Because I guess we currently have emissions reduction plan for the organisation, and it's got a target, and we've mapped that out, but things are changing a bit in that space at the same time. Is that something that you'd say would best fit in the climate change strategy that you're working on, or is it an earlier conversation? And just wary of workloads and not adding like another thing.
As Evelisa said, there is already things that are happening in this space. So there's already actions where different areas at H3 have been having conversations around it as well in terms of their space and what they can do. So there's definitely things that are happening. I think the policy is one area that will help, as Evelisa said, around the principles and sort of that hierarchy we've been talking about in there. And the other thing is then through the strategy is where we would say, set that high level sort of direction, but then in the implementation, it would be a priority area potentially to go, actually, this looks like something we want to focus on in the short term. Let's really look at that in terms of increasing the target or increasing where we want to get to as a corporate. So there's definitely things happening in different areas which is awesome, but it's how do we then through the policy and strategy then sort of unify that, I think.
Okay, no, that's clear. And thank you. Last one was the Mayor Paula was brought up some issues around waste minimisation. Do we know when is the next time the waste minimisation monitoring report is coming to this committee? It's probably somewhere really obvious, but I don't have it in front of me.
That is in the forward work program. It's got it in the February-March committee, pending confirmation of committee dates for next year.
So I understand we can have a discussion around what we prioritise in terms of actions within that waste minimisation plan outside of the recycling service work. Sean, would it be, given the interest in this, would it be worth having kind of that as a discussion on that as part of one of our upcoming workshops like this morning? Just to enable the, for those interested, to enable them to ask some questions around what actions we're currently undertaking in the waste minimisation plan, and where there's an opportunity to, I suppose, decide what is prioritised or support that.
Possibly. I've probably said that is the purpose of that monitoring report coming to the committee meeting. I'm just not sure, bring it to a workshop as well. It sounds like double handling. Yeah,
maybe we can discuss it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Count that your worship has to leave. We're okay with a quorum without Her Worship the Mayor, is that correct?
I'm all right till about 3:15.
No, that's fine, because otherwise we've only got Kesh and Mark as the options at that point. I totally respect the pressure under Your Worship, given the current situation. but we'll be.
I'll stay
I
on
think we're.
Martin.
Yeah.
I'll stay on as long as I can. I was just reaching out if anybody was available to liberate me
Yeah,
a bit later.
that'd only be question mark, and I'll send them if they can. No, thank you. I now go to Mangai Norm for the next questions. Thank you.
Kia ora. I'll try and be as quick as possible, but I raised it this morning, and my point this morning was where does Mātauranga Māori matter and or fit in regards to measuring, monitoring and planning of any strategy, and obviously in particular we're looking at climate here. And the reason why I asked that question is certainly being involved in hapu and marae and iwi strategies throughout my young career. A big part of the discussions now are targeting erosion, tsunami, water storage, biodiversity protection, taonga protection, etc. So there's a role for Mātauranga Māori in monitoring, protecting and deciding and planning. So unfortunately, we missed the opportunity to meet with Regional Council, but just a question, Sean, what's the plan in terms of making Mātauranga Māori matter with regards to this plan?
So we have a stream of work under He Paumanawa Order to develop a Mātauranga Māori framework to be part of council decision making. So it's not just for the Environment Committee, but that's something that we would look to consider across all of our decision making. So that's probably the kind of the short answer. We're relatively we met with staff at Waikato Regional Council about their Mātauranga Māori framework and some of the tools and processes that they have. They were due to present and discuss that with elected members at the workshop this morning, but they were unavailable because of sort of COVID related matters. So we have sort of lost a little bit of ground there, but we're looking to reconvene and have that workshop again to understand. I think Regional Council are slightly more advanced in sort of some of their, like say, tools and things that they have around Mātauranga Māori framework. So we are looking to learn from them and then ultimately collaborate with them. But yeah, that's but we've prioritised that as a stream of work under He Paumanawa Order as well.
Yep, ka pai. I raised it this morning. Happy to support where I can, Sean. If you go online and you Google Indigenous Climate Action Plan, there's a whole bunch of great tools. And if I'm just looking at one now around Environmental Protection Authorities, Mātauranga Māori framework around climate action, it's pretty good. So there's certainly tools out there that we could utilise to give a kiri-kiri-roa centric approach to protecting our our resources under this korowai. And in regards to data, it would be great. They call them dashboards when you're measuring things across lots of different categories, and green and using your traffic light system. So certainly within the dashboard focus reporting monitoring tool would be great to see where the cultural component fits into that, and obviously partnership fits into that as well. Obviously, Te Tiriti Waitangi, Tai Tumu, Tai Pari Tai Paumanawa Order fits into that. So it'd be really great to see how we're measuring and monitoring our process based on a cultural ideology that's unique to us.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that is, so there's I can't remember, I haven't got it in front of me, but it's due to come back to council at some point on the sort of well-being framework and measuring and monitoring of that, which does include indicators, measures, etc. around those things. I just don't have the kind of the timeframes in front of me, unfortunately, but that is definitely on the agenda to bring that back to council.
Yep. Just one last point. Certainly having a cultural element within the conversation is fantastic. I'd also put a plug in there for rangatahi. It'd be great in some way, somehow. How can we, provide a forum that gives a rangatahi voice towards a strategy that's obviously inclusive of their thinking within, the strategy within the strategy. I think a rangatahi voice would be quite a useful tool. Actually, a powerful tool. Not useful, powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If there are not, I understand Deputy Chair Sarah Thompson is we're in the process of, she is in the process of framing up a motion, and I think that can go on the screen. Is that okay, Sarah? Have you ready? Carmen, if we could put Sarah's motion up on the screen. I just want to check.
And yeah, can I check that this kind of encapsulates what people are looking for?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. That captures my concerns.
Seconded, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you.
Right. Is there any additions? Is there anything further on that? We now go to debate. I'll ask the mover of the motion, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Martin. Firstly, I just want to thank the work that Charlotte and the team have been doing. It's been really, it's been a huge step change having Charlotte on board, and to have her strategic thinking and her skills and knowledge in this area is fantastic. And I guess this is going to be the last time that we have just a collation of things that we're kind of already doing. The climate change strategy is going to be very forward-looking, and it's going to stretch us as an organisation and as decision makers in terms of setting out the pathway that we need to follow to reach to get to a low carbon economy and community. And so it has been a journey. And it's certainly taken a bit longer than I would have liked, but at least we are a good way along that journey. And so coming back to this climate action plan, I really support the need to have very clear and measurable targets with timeframes for those key actions within this climate action plan, and support the idea of just having a page or 2 pages where someone can pick it up and see how we've done in a year's time. Have we reached these targets? And even if they haven't gone to the relevant committees yet, I think we can at least just say in a disclaimer, some of these are subject to external funding, because the biggest question mark we have for a number of these actions will be co-funding from Waka Kotahi. And I think that it is really important also that we continue to monitor these actions, because ultimately it's all good having things on paper and things budgeted, but actually getting them to happen is a whole nother matter. So it's fantastic to have so much interest in the strategy and in monitoring it. And I thank everyone for their really good questions.
Thank you. Second to Councillor O'Leary, would you like to follow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just want to support what Councillor Thompson has said and thank her for including my concerns in the motion. You can't manage what you don't monitor. And the point that I was making with my questions was that we need to clearly monitor, but also we need to take the public along this journey of climate change. And if we don't commit to providing that information and that journey in an easy to read and easy to digest way, we end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because we lose sight of the information around climate change. And when we start talking about emissions and trading schemes, you're going to lose general public. Sometimes you lose me, and I am a supporter. But we've got to keep sight of the small wins as well, and I think that that's really important, because it shows us as a leader. And staff during question time talked about something that made some of us smile, just about that the use of HCC utes, and I'm certainly not gonna I'm not prejudiced against utes, but that an assessment of our fleet has been done, and that more than 90% aren't used as utes and could be swapped out for vehicles of lower emissions. not only does that show the community that actually it's, and other businesses, that actually it's an easy exercise to do, but also will return better financial as well as environmental outcomes for ratepayers. And that's a small win that I think is an easy story that we should be monitoring, we should be tracking, and we should be telling the community rather than trying to talk to them about emissions and you know, all of the figures and the numbers that often scare people, and then you get lumped with climate change deniers and being labelled as one. So I think that was the point that I was trying to make. I look forward to the strategy that we're going to be developing, and hope that that's going to be an easy to read strategy that will paint a picture of a story and take people along this difficult but very, very important journey. Because actually, while we can lead by example and do our bit, and other organisations can, it's the general public who are the ones that, once they're on board, will make the greatest advances for, you know, our goals and aspirations of a better city and a better planet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Your Worship, the Mayor, to be followed by Councillor Mcpherson, then Mangai Norm Hill. Your Worship.
Thanks, Chair Gallagher. Thank you everyone for all the work, because I know there's many hours and lots of resource put into this to get us to this point. So I want to say big thanks to everybody. This was important to me, and it was one of the key reasons that I re-established an Environment Committee at the beginning of this term. Angela's absolutely right. We must measure, because this is the only way we know if we are being effective. We know what's working well and what's not working. I'm always reminded that on a regular basis that the voice of the community on climate was clear and loud. The situation is also urgent. Every couple of weeks you turn on the television or a documentary or the radio and you hear further news which is disheartening about the trends in climate and the scale of the problem that we're all part of. So the situation is urgent. We need to be accountable. We can't do everything, and I just do want to make that quite clear to the public. We can't do everything. We can't be the only agency, the only people who are doing anything to deal with climate change. But what we can do, we should do. We should play our part, and certainly as council, we've got the opportunity to facilitate and encourage other people to do what they've got to do. Thankfully, we've already proven that we can show the leadership that Angela's talking about. We are leaders in the space with waste, and that comes down in large part to the people who've run that committee in the past, and also in this term, and also the staff and their expertise and their passion for what they do. So I have good hopes for this, because I believe that the same passion and drive will be applied to this project. So let's be leaders in this space. We have luckily, we're lucky in many ways, because we've got the base that we need to get that 10% ecologically significant cover in the city, which will really help with climate. And we've just got to do what we've got to do. We've got to get those trees in. We've got to enable the planting. We've got to make more pace. We've got to move from the 2 point whatever percent we are at now to the 10% in a meaningful time frame. Not over decades, but over years. We've got to move faster. Also, as taking on board some of the comments that Councillor Mcpherson, Dave made, he's quite right. We've got to move faster in that space of transportation, because whether we like it or not, transport's changing, and I believe will change even faster. You know, you're seeing major car companies now across the world indicating and telling the public that they're going to full electric within, and that's pretty revolutionary. Imagine nobody 5 years ago would have foreseen that Jaguar and other major companies would be saying that, and they are saying that. So the world's changing, and we need to get on board. So this is a really good step forward. Support all the really good dialogue. The workshop was great this morning also, so thank you everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Mcpherson.
Thank you, Chair. I support all of the things that people have been saying, and particularly the point that Paula's just made, where she raised what we're doing in waste minimisation, waste management area, and that was a bit of a sea change. We had some options when we were deciding how much of that current package we've got would actually implement. And I remember the discussion around food waste, and not many councils were doing it and some were having difficulties with it. We said, no, it's the right thing to do. Let's go for the whole hog. And it's been quite successful because it was well set out by our staff, and some of them obviously are here today. And there was good buy-in from the public because there was good engagement before, during, and after, I might add there. So that's some of the lessons that Angela was talking about as well. There's an issue that I want to raise that I touched on earlier in my question, and that is how the Resource Management Act and planning rules generally lag far behind any of our other work. And I'm concerned, using the same example I did in my question, that we're going to allow planning rules that are way out of date, even if you weren't worried about climate change, are still out of date, that require masses and masses of car parks and therefore promote private vehicle use, internal combustion engine use, I might add, ahead of good sound emission reduction vehicle use. It beggars description why we have that system, why we're allowing that to be preeminent in some of our areas. And these are areas that are not just a problem today and we can fix them tomorrow. These are areas that have lasting impressions created on the urban form, and what we're encouraging and teaching people to do in our community, and the lack of leadership that they show in our community. So I'd like us to address how we can tackle that problem as well, not today, but in the near future. How do we teach the planners of the world that having hundreds of car parks in a small shopping centre is not necessarily a good idea just because some rule says it is? You know, there's a whole lot of other things like that. You know, 4-lane roads, do they have to be used as 4-lane roads? Do we have to create extra lanes all the time? You know, there's a whole lot of areas like that, not just in terms of our fleet and what our staff do, but what sort of leadership really are we providing, an example are we providing the community? Those are some of the areas I'd like to see us get into. Thank you.
I was about to give an extension of time because, as you know, I'm very rigorous on time, but you've now used your time anyway, so that's cool. Thank you. Mga Norm.
Kia ora. I was going to give Dave some of my time, so I'll be quick. Mātauranga is knowledge. A collective of measured knowledge is data, and data is key. There's a concept called data tiratanga, which talks about the importance and sovereignty of information collected, also known as data. So when we measure ourselves based on our KPIs, individually as a whānau, collectively as an organisation, it's important that we recognise a measuring of data in terms of its well-being also. So in terms of measurements, we look at input, output, outcome, and impact. And once you understand the true measurement of its impact, then you can get a true measurement of the well-being of the leadership that we speak to. There's the old adage from King Te Awhiao, he aha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. In the mentoring that I undertake with a number of corporate companies, I do my best to change the cultural narrative of yesteryear. What is the most important thing in the world is people, but I've been reaffirming that hea te mea nui o te ao, ko te tai ao, ko te tai ao, ko te tai ao. What is the most important thing in the world? It's actually the planet. It's the planet, and it's the planet. So if we put our planet first, incrementally, the well-being of our people would be sustained through that. And I just want to acknowledge and congratulate the leadership that's being shown by council here to put a plan in place to contribute towards the wellbeing of our planet. And I acknowledge the staff, the leadership, and the waka journey that we're on to incrementally make the necessary changes to contribute towards the planet being the most important thing to us. Kia ora.
Thank you, Norm. Are there any further speakers? I think everyone's spoken. I'll just do a very brief contribution before Councillor Sarah exercises her right of reply. Manga Norm, I think with respect, you've summed up in a broad level in a very excellent way, and I want to thank you for that. I just take the opportunity to thank Charlotte Katmer and the total team, and I also want to express my ongoing concern that we make sure that we have adequate staff resource across all of these areas, because while we're dealing with this at quite a higher level as a committee with our terms of reference, this obviously definitely flows into the other key committees, and obviously Councillor Angela and Councillor Dave's committees are absolutely across this. So the issue of staff resource is very, very important. I also would make the point that clear ongoing communication strategy is very crucial, and I want to welcome and acknowledge our comms team. As part of that journey, obviously they are doing great work, but it's really important that we bring the community with us. And also the point is made that in preparing for better strategies and resilience, transport mode choice, waste reduction, all of those things, that still leads us to a better, more livable, lovely city to live, work and play in. This can be, with respect, a positive in that sense in terms of what is the type of community you want to live in, without detracting from the very serious problems, as Manga Norm has pointed out, that are facing the planet. The other thing, and I just want to pick up Councillor Angela's O'Leary's challenge and Dave Max and others in terms of a checklist and a action list. Clear leadership by our corporate council is important. So as HCC, as a significant corporate in the city, must show leadership by example. And, examples were given particularly around some of the fleet issues and whole of life and some of the decisions that were there. And obviously, while we're dealing with this today at a sort of a highish level, obviously all of our subsequent committees, particularly in terms of reporting, are going to be ongoing right across this, absolutely. So thank you all, and I think it's been a very constructive debate, and I will make the point that I do accept the challenge, as we all do, from Councillor Mcpherson, that this must not be another coffee table book or even a virtual coffee table book, as we don't do paper. Even I don't do paper these days. So, but thank you all anyway. That's been great. Councillor Sarah, in reply.
Thank you. All really good contributions. And I was just going to add, in terms of the, I guess, leading by example and showing best practice with our passenger fleet and our corporate fleet, it would be fantastic if, for example, we could come out to the public and say by the end of 2022 the whole passenger fleet will be zero emissions. So that's the kind of, I think, really clear targets and measurable targets that we really need going forward. This isn't business as usual. As Dave said, it is urgent, and I just wanted to say that I really liked his ideas of, for example, reallocating road space fairly quickly, and probably without a lot of expense. We could turn Anglesey Street and Tarapa Road very quickly into multimodal corridors with bus lanes and car lanes. So it really is, I think, having a gear change or a step change in our thinking, where we go, how can we do things a lot faster to actually respond to climate change at the right level, given the level of urgency we face.
Right. Can we put the motion back up on the board, please, Carmen, and then we will proceed to vote. Right. Thank you. I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And Carmen will do the count and then let us know. Sorry, your sound is gone, Carmen.
There we go. Sorry about that. The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Would people be interested in a quick 5-minute break, or do you want to make rapid progress?
Oh, they absolutely would. That would be brilliant. Thank you. Because if we walk away, we've got no quorum. 5 minutes, please, Martin.
All right. Okay. I'm going to declare a 5-minute break. No self-interest here, of course.
Thanks very much. on. Here we go.
Right.
You make it like spring,
I think
Sarah.
we have a quorum.
Oh.
Sorry, Paula.
No, I'm just saying Sarah makes me feel like it should be spring, but it's not warm enough for spring yet.
Well, I'm of course, if we were not on YouTube, I would say I'm absolutely located in Hamilton Gardens, but I won't mislead people because I'd hate people to think I was breaking level 4 lockdown rules by hosting a meeting in the Hamilton Gardens. I think it would probably be, I think I would be visited by certain people to say that is not appropriate. So I'm absolutely hosting this at home, notwithstanding the lovely rhododendron lawns backdrop, which of course once was going to be a car park, but not anymore, thank goodness.
And Angela usually has enough space. Usually Galaxy, Angela.
I do.
Yes. And I'm missing your baking, Angela, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Can't have Uber deliveries.
No.
Right. Okay. Let's just do a quick check. We've got all the councillors and Mangai Norm back in the room, have we, Carmen?
We do have quorum now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we have quorum now. And Dave, I believe, is just about to join.
Yes, and of course, Dave, as we know, is obviously sorting a grandchild with a broken finger, which is not good. Okay, look, we'll now go to item 9, Environmental Committee Forward Work Programme, and I'll hand over to Charlotte and Sean to present.
Thank you, Chair Martin. So I'll just a couple of words, but not much. So on the report on page 47, it's just sort of referencing the terms of reference for the committee. And this is the purpose of this report is to help give some clarity as to this committee relative to what some of the other committees handle, and also then to kind of how that plays out to what you should expect to see at each committee over the remainder of the term. So the forward work program diagram on page 48 of your agenda is really just noting that there's these kind of key elements that the key roles that the Environment Committee plays, one around the policies, strategies and plans. And so really it's that direction setting role that Councillor Angela was referring to earlier, and the specifics there around what's included in that. The monitoring piece around the committee's role in monitoring those various strategies and plans and other activity that's happening. And that's where the climate action plan and the activities that often get approved or reported up through other committees, this is where they come together for the purposes of having a single view. One, so that as a council, we can see all the things that are happening in the climate space, but also as a sort of a really good vehicle and a platform for being able to communicate to the community, and the advocacy stream as well. So this is the types of things that this committee advocates for on behalf of council, particularly to central government, but to other agencies as well. And so it's those list of things there. And then along the bottom, the communication engagement piece, and I've kind of referenced that already, that having the Environment Committee plays a key role in, as I said, bringing together a lot of things that are actually dealt with or managed through other committees, but bringing them all together in one place actually helps us tell a more cohesive story around what the council is actually doing. And then the following page is really just the calendar of what you should expect to see in terms of upcoming committee meetings. And I would just sort of note that the climate change action plan, we have got sort of the monitoring against that in every committee. So not just, we don't miss out a quarter, is referencing back to our previous conversation. And I will leave it there.
Thank you. Sean, does Charlotte have anything to add?
No, nothing further to add on that.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Questions from members of the committee? I'm looking for the hands. I have Councillor Mcpherson first.
Thank you, Sean. I was looking before at your update on advocacy opportunities, little section there, and I see that Ministry of Environment ran workshops for staff, council staff, local government staff, not just our council, and then a bit below that, number 13, on page 51, I think it is, you're talking about further opportunities for engagement next year with them. Is that just for staff, or actually they're going to be engaging a bit wider? The Ministry for the Environment's not noted for its community consultation. They sort of haven't got into that aspect of life all that much, I've observed over the years, compared with some of the other departments. How do we engage with them? How do we get them to engage with us and the wider community?
Through you, Chair, I can. That's actually the next report. It's we can answer the question now if you would like. That's actually the report after this one.
I thought this was the last report of the.
No. It's we've got a late item number 10, which is General Manager's report, Dave. So are you happy we pick that up under that?
Well, that's what I'm on.
Oh, we're on item 9, forward work program.
Oh shit. Okay, sorry. Excuse my French.
No, sorry. Unfortunately, we don't have a 7-second delay like Talkback Radio where you can bleep it out. Never mind. Yeah. I don't think there'll be a Broadcasting Standards Authority complaint. I'm not predicting that. Do you have any further questions, Dave? Can you demute? You're on mute. Shake of head, no. Okay. Further questions, please, in terms of the forward work program. Okay. Dave, your hand's still up. I'm not sure if you're... No, obviously you're quite relaxed. You're shaking your head. Okay. Right. If there's no further questions, I will put that the Environment Committee receives the report and approves the Environment Committee forward work program as per attachment 1. I will move that, seconded by Councillor Sarah. Is there debate? If there's no debate, I will now put the question and the motion. Please raise your hand. Those in favour?
Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. We now go to item 10, the General Manager's report. Sean?
Thank you, Chair Martin. I'll probably just take it as read and happy to answer questions. And I know there's at least one.
Yes. Okay. First of all, I have a question too later on, but Councillor Mcpherson.
Yes, same question as before, Sean. Can you remember it?
Yeah, and Charlotte's going to answer it.
Well done.
So, yes, there is some proposed consultation happening for the community. Unfortunately, it's still subject to Cabinet approval when that's going to happen around the climate change program of work. So the emissions reduction plan, the MFE staff have indicated that they want to consult with the community on that, which would include councils as well in a very public way. But that is subject to Cabinet approval. So we haven't heard yet when that will be occurring. It has to be approved by the end of this year. So it would likely be September, October that we would see that consultation occur. The same with the adaptation plan and the work that they're doing on that is that would happen early next year. And they have said they want to do community consultation on that as well.
Charlotte, could we, our HCC, actively promote whatever community consultation opportunities come up? Because I've noticed this, even the Ministry of Transport, and that they have these community consultations, but the community wouldn't know they're happening usually because they're not advertised and not promoted in the right way. And I think this is an issue that would be really great to see the community widely involved and much more widely perhaps than the ministry might want.
I think that sounds like a really good idea, and we can work with our comms support. Emily's just joined us to work out how the best way to do that is. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Question I have, I think, to Sean and Charlotte. there's been a reference, obviously, we're looking at, the role of cabinet, role of individual ministers. And I know that we've sort of certainly got relationships with, for example, Housing Minister, Transport Minister and others, thanks to, and Paul are doing a lot of good work in Wellington. But, the person who I think we should be engaging with on his next visit, hopefully, or encourage a next visit, would be the Climate Change Minister, James Shaw, next time he's in the Waikato area. And I'm just trying to think, and Paula may have some views on this, I'm just trying to think of the interaction that we could have, because obviously just looking at that whole of government approach and stuff that we, the good news, the stuff that all of our groups we're doing collectively, but even our opportunity to feed back to him and get some sense of him in terms of the ongoing strategic direction. I don't know, Mayor Paula, if you've got a view, because obviously you do quite given your role, and your role on local government New Zealand, obviously, wearing your multi hats, what you think of that?
I think it's a very good idea. I spoke to him at Field Days and invited him to let us know when he was next down here. I'm also going, well, subject to COVID, I'm planned to go to Wellington next month, and I'm down there for other reasons, but I'm hoping to wrap up a couple of ministerial visits so we could write to him. When James gets back on Monday next week, we could sit down with the right people, Martin, and work out what it is we want to convey to him. I think the timing's quite right because there's an interplay between climate work and all of these other streams, the built environment, the MPS urban development, consequential, the 3 waters, consequential, climate change commission and all of that. It's all part of the same weave. So I'm happy to, if he comes here, then I can of course incorporate yourself, Sarah, or both, into that conversation. If we're going to Wellington.
Sure, and I'm just my thinking aloud. I'm certainly keen. Obviously, he'll touch base with regional council, iwi, and the groups such as Go Eco. The people, there's people actually in the community who are doing some incredible stuff. And
there is.
I think,
so we can work through the MPs and see what they know about, what intelligence they can get about he's coming up here, and we can host him. He was willing to do that when I spoke to him. Because there's a lot of cross conversations. I mean, I think it's really important at this time for them to know what affects us across other portfolios rather than to be too portfolio specific. I mean, we had this really good meeting with Minister Wood and Mahuta all in the same Zoom area, and that was really, really good. It's very rare that you have 3 ministers all in one meeting space for so long. That was pretty brilliant. But we do need to probably, Minister Shaw is the one that we've had less direct contact with. I'm happy to redress that. So when
obviously everything through your office here.
Yeah, we'll do it through James when he's back in the office, and Sean will figure out what the key message is.
Carmen, we just make a minute. Carmen, we can just make a minute note of that, and that's really good. Thanks, Your Worship. That's great.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Clarification. It's Deputy Chair Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add that potentially we could join up that conversation with the regional council if we felt that was helpful, which I imagine it would be. Actually, that was it. That was going to be my question, so that's all.
No, that's great. And I'm also picking up Councillor Mcpherson's point. If we look at geographic area, when he was alluding to the role of the regional council as well. Any further questions?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to suggest that I have a relationship with him, a stronger relationship with him through the Waikato River Authority, but Minister Parker is another key minister, and I've had a number of conversations with him, which have been really more or less passing conversations rather than totally strategic conversations, but he does take a very keen interest, and he would take an interest in both the 3 waters in respect to its water quality, but also the environmental work that we're doing and understanding what the pressures are, the resourcing pressures to really tackle these issues would be worthwhile as well, I think.
I think, no, that's great. He's an old colleague of mine from a few years back. But hey, Carmen, could we, both of the ministers, could we just make a minute note? Thanks, Paula. That's excellent. That's excellent. Any further contributions before I put the motion, which is that the Environment Committee, Sean, sorry, is there anything you want to add before I put the motion?
No.
Right. I'm just going to, the Environment Committee received the report and approves the deferral of the infill and loss of vegetation and gullies report to a future meeting of the Environment Committee. It's been previously, canvassed. Seconded by Councillor, by Her Worship the Mayor. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
Motion is carried unanimously.
That, I think, brings us to the end of the meeting. And I want to note with the other chairs what relatively short meetings I can run.
Well done, Martin.
It was short but
Yes,
powerful.
yes.
Short
Yes.
and powerful.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And thank you
Thanks,
to both
everyone.
you, Sarah, for
No,
putting.
thank you all. Thank you all.
Hey, Martin and Sarah, thank you for putting together such a strong agenda with staff, Sean. We're really appreciating the traction that this committee's getting now. So thank you.
Yeah,
Good work.
thank you, everyone.
Okay. We're now going off YouTube, as I understand.